Of course, as you all well know, the war in Ukraine, which was already mentioned earlier, but also in the Middle East, and geopolitical tensions, trade conflicts, we are living in a difficult time, so to speak, for sure. So, how to actually navigate through these times of crisis and uncertainty, and how to guide especially employees and prepare for the future. I am looking forward to hopefully getting some answers to these questions with Tatjana Kiel. She's the CEO of Klitschko Ventures and manager of the NGO We Are All Ukrainians. With Dr. Tamaz Georgadze, the CEO and co-founder of the Fintech Raisin, especially known for the interest rate platform Weltsparen, and Brett Scott, author, activist, and former broker. Please come to the stage. Yeah, we were just here. Take your seat. I really don't just have to sit here. So, thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure. I would like to start with you, Tatjana. May I say Tatjana? Right.
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, your work, of course, had another focus. How did you use your work experience from before for the new cause, for this non-profit We Are All Ukrainians, which implements aid but also creates a network, right?
Yes. So very nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I just came back actually from Kiev last night, and I have to say, to see how people have hope in times of crisis is interesting, and how people are really working on solutions in time of crisis. So I'm not the expert in Fin, but in tech right now, because we see what we need in terms of helping small target groups, for instance, students or people who are living in Kiev now because they're not able to live somewhere else. And I see that we need to find solutions for small target groups. Ukrainians are very digital, and they find solutions so easily. And of course, if you have the situation that you just want to live, because your life is in danger, then you would think, okay, that's what happened in Kiev. Everybody was trying to get cash. There was no cash after 1 or 2 hours left. Everybody was trying to get their families in a car and to get out of Kiev. There was no fuel after 2 hours in the city itself. So we need to find solutions for crisis themes, and I think we can really learn from that, what they are doing now, and that is what I'm trying to do. We are going to try to find the solutions they find in hard times, and then to adapt it here, because it's in critical situations, it's easier to adapt than to learn from the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. Can you give us some example of how you really, what you learned about the requirements, tools, scaling, networking, and of course also cooperation during these times?
So you have to understand that I started working with the Klitschko brothers 20 years ago. So we know us for a very long time, and I know the whole network in Germany, and I also know the network from Kiev or from the Ukrainian side. And if we ask for something in Germany, we literally are able to getting it, because we are trying to be very transparent and show what we need. So, for example, if a school has no basement, the school is not able to open. Right? So children have to move somewhere else, or they have to use online tools. We got 3 million, fortunately, from a company, and we were able to give the students the possibility to learn online or in the basement itself. And what we see there is how easy it is when you have the possibility to learn from scratch. The children just want to learn. They really want to learn. The parents want them to learn. So now we don't even have just an online course, but we have the parents can talk to the teachers. What we learn now is that we try to figure out what are the children good at, and then they have the possibility to learn even more and even better in what they're good at. So, because I think that is the worst thing that crises are doing, that you don't have children who are learning because they're not able to. They will, and that is only because of IT.
Let's talk about behavior in crisis, because you already mentioned like the need for cash. Brett, during the you wrote and talked a lot, of course, about cashless societies in times of crisis, and people really tend to focus more on traditional ways of saving money. I think, like literally putting some money in the mattress or buying gold. This year we see a crazy rally when it comes to gold. So how do you think, how long will this be the case?
Well, I mean, the standard...
That people act like this.
The standard digital ideology will say that you'll get a cashless society, right? Because in the standard economic system, the pressure is towards expansion and acceleration, right? The global economy is always trying to expand outwards, right? And in that context, something like physical cash is seen as standing in the way, slowing things down, etc., at least in the official ideology. The reality, though, on the ground is very different, all right? So this is why I often speak about cash as being like the public bicycle system of payments versus the private Uber. All right, because the typical way people will speak about cash is as if it's some kind of horse cart or something like that, which will inevitably be destroyed. In reality, non-digital systems are as forward-facing as any kind of digital fintech solution. And in fact, in many parts of sub-Saharan Africa, the fintechs actually work to facilitate the access to cash, for example. One of the reasons why in Ukraine you have a problem with the cash systems going down was that people were not planning for those contingencies. You actually need to have cash tech systems, you need to have contingency systems in place to make sure you have a balance of different types of payments are available. So this is the best way to be thinking about this. I know most people have a sort of casual progress ideology in their head which says automation is inevitably good. In reality, human society actually needs a whole range of different types of things that play at once, especially in situations of crisis.
Yeah, definitely. Would you like, it seems like you want to react to this?
No, I just wanted to say, absolutely, we see that.
Yeah, you agree. Tamaz, it seems strategical decisions, especially, have never been as difficult as they are now. How does the geopolitical tension affect potential deals nowadays with, for example, investors or even for expansion for you?
Yeah, so I think so. First thing is, I think the most important thing is what's happening in Ukraine, so everything else doesn't matter that much compared to that. And so what happens in Ukraine influences us all very deeply. So I think we have a war waged against West from multiple actors, Russia being at the forefront of it. And that is something that I come from Georgia, so another country where Russia is into. And it's very close to my heart to do everything possible inside Raisin, outside Raisin, to rally support, to donate, to bring people to donate, and to face this threat both in Ukraine but also internally in Germany. And what's happening in politics is we have powers who wage war on us influencing domestic politics. And this is something we want to be very alert. So this is where the whole thing starts. So it's like much more impactful than what we can do on financials of a company, on doing whatever backup plans or anything else, right? When it comes to the company and to the management of the company, of course, so I'll give an example, went into the UK after the it was before the Brexit vote, where actually everyone said, oh, it will be close, but very clear against Brexit and so on and so on. So, but we built everything with the view that it has to be sustainable if the Brexit vote goes the wrong way, which it at the end did. So this is like the approach we have and had in the last years, because the politics and the regulation became a bit more unpredictable. So what was normal in the past, that the markets get more open, closer, the barriers are removed, it's not happening anymore, and some of the things are being rolled back. And I think a very prudent to ask yourself, like, what's the very improbable 5 or 10% scenario which can lead us to rethink the whole thing. So, and build it for that scenario. Do not build it for the sunny day scenario, build it actually for the scenario where things go wrong. And that's, I think, the only kind of thing which you can do, and the only catchphrase is build it for the rainy day, not for the sunny day.
But can you give us an example of how it is like for you nowadays to work? For example, you are working together with, you have around 400 partner banks worldwide, and I mean, there's a diversity of crises going on at the moment. So how does it affect how you communicate and think about your business partners as well?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, on that part, so we went through a couple of bank runs and also insolvencies. So things are happening. So the last big crisis, which we're not part of, was in the US, where we have a significant business also with regional banks, the Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank and Credit Suisse crisis. And what we have is, out of the last, is we have a real playbook. So what happens from day one, from a kind of pre-insolvency scenario in terms of what's happening in the war room, who is part of it, what do we communicate to the customers, how we engage with the deposit guarantee scheme, do we have a pre-agreement with them, are the payout terms clear, and so on and so on. So we have an internal playbook which we do also wargaming on, and know exactly what happens and what should happen in a case, in an improbable case of things going wrong, right? So that's part of the ongoing business for us. We are in that business for 11 years already and have, as you mentioned, 400 banks, so you need to be prepared.
Yeah, definitely. Talking about leading in those times of uncertainty and chaos, Tatjana, how would you describe the role of executives in times of crisis? It's a big question.
Yeah, exactly. I would answer that in terms of what we saw, how Vladimir and Vitali reacted when the war came. So Vladimir said after 1 month before the war started, he said, just don't worry, but I will stay with my brother because he needs me right now and the country needs us. So in terms of what I saw is people want to see heroes. They want to have someone who's leading, who's standing in front, who's facing the problems and saying, I don't know how, but we will manage it somehow. So you don't even need solutions, but you need to have the capacity to say, yes, I feel fear, but I'm still standing here and we are facing it together. I think that bravery made it very easy for us here in Germany to say, okay, whatever you need, we will provide it. Because if you, and these two guys don't have to stay there, right? So if you are staying there and you are showing us how brave you are or how important it is to show the face to the challenge, then we will provide you whatever you need. And that is what happened, right? After when they started and we said we need these things, it was really, really fast when we got the companies, because the companies and also the people, they want to help. Politicians want to help, but politicians are not that fast. And so we had to start to show solidarity, because solidarity and feelings and seeing that that we care makes the difference. So the part that I felt being there for 12 hours with a big delegation on Monday, I felt when I saw all the partners we are working together, and they are facing horrible things, to be honest. We talked to the children who got deported and we brought them back. And you're looking at them and you don't even know what to say, right? But they don't want to talk. They just want to hug you and they want to say, my biggest respect that you are here. Because that's what we need to see, that you're still standing on our side.
Thank you. Before we come to you, Brett, again, one follow-up question. Tamaz, what would you say? So solidarity and kind of a hero figure, what, in your opinion, is important for the role of executives in times of crisis?
I think, so there are a few things that matter, like two things for me that is out is communication and clarity. So I think you need to over-communicate and avoid fluffy language and be very clear. So very clear of what you know and what you don't know, because some things you don't know, like so people will also, others will need to live with uncertainty, not only you. If there is a decision or action, clearly communicate it and explain it why and why it's better, why the outcome is better. So I think like we all lived through a lot of crises. I mean, Ukraine a crisis and the aggression of Russia being the last one, but we went through Corona, we went through, and all those experiences were all the time, if you are clear on communication and very blunt, then people are much, much more supportive than kind of having the lull of no clarity and like comfort of it, but on the other side, it's an uncomfortable comfort where you know things might be happening, there are decisions that need to be taken, so clear communication helps.
So maybe it's also a question of availability then, right? For example, for your staff, for example, or business partners that you are there in cases. How do you handle that?
I'm always there, so I've always been there. So that, I think, doesn't change from crisis or not crisis. So.
Yes, okay, but I think that's something to keep in mind. Now I would like to include a question from our community, and a kindly reminder, please all feel free to use this tool. It's a question for you, Brad. What are the downsides of cashless payment in the future, in your opinion?
How long do you have?
You have 2 minutes now.
Well, I mean, look, the reality is, as I said, in a large-scale capitalist system, what it does is it automates, right?
Right.
So, I mean, think about the fintech sector. What is the fintech sector? It tries to automate finance. It tries to take elements of finance previously not automated and to automate them. That's essentially what it does, right? In the process, it will facilitate a whole bunch of expansion of the capitalist system. Tech companies get bigger, etc. So that's a generalized process that's been going on for hundreds of years, right? Increasing automation. In the process, so you get increasing concentration of power, right? But you also get increasing resilience problems at the same time, right? Like geopolitical risks are being amplified right now precisely because of big tech companies, right? There's new vectors of cybercrime, cyber attacks, hacking, etc. Digital cyber warfare. These all come about because of essentially the capitalist imperative to expand, right? You open up these new ways to attack into society. So that's one big thing. This is why national security people are very scared about cashless society. They'll say, geez, if you have an actual crisis in your society or an attack, you've got real big problems, right? And this is, of course, not part of the marketing pitch of the standard tech company, but this is the reality behind the scenes. Beyond that, you just have concentration of power in an oligopoly of tech companies and finance companies, which is what people are already growing used to. Most young people now are being born into that situation, so they're coming to expect it. They've been born into a situation where they actually don't realize there was once an outside to those sectors, right? So they believe that actually it's inevitable progress. And yet, you'll also be seeing right now a growing backlash against that very same ideology, even among young people, right? Because we currently live in the situation which says ever more digital acceleration is great, and yet everybody simultaneously experiences themselves becoming deeply addicted, burnt out, full of anxiety, and so on as this acceleration continues. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised in 10 years there'll be a massive actual cultural backlash against digitization, all right? But beyond this, you have surveillance, censorship, you have resilience problems, you have exclusion problems. There's a huge number of things that happen when you centralize power or you Uberize payments, which is why you've got to fight for a balance of power between these different things.
Yeah, definitely, and also still have options. Let's come to times of crisis, especially. I think, yeah, of course, the worst form of conflict is war, and but also cyber attacks, as you mentioned. We often see nowadays, and it shows how vulnerable critical infrastructure is. For example, you said Ukrainians are pretty digital, but I think a lot of countries, people are. So, Brett, would you say, do you think a more digitalized and automation-driven society, like you already explained, is significantly more vulnerable as well?
Yes. Yeah, obviously. I mean, that's if you think about decentralization in economies, which is, if you fast forward back into the 1950s, for example, you'll find a lot more decentralization in economies, right? You'll find big corporates, but they will be, they'll be sitting in big cities like Berlin and stuff, and then further away in smaller towns, you'll have, the products of those corporates arriving there, but there'll be a lot more localization. The person in the shop paying cash, etc. There's a lot more decentralization in your economy. What you're finding increasingly now, though, is that everything is routing via huge central systems, right? A person paying so-called cashless payment, right? You're paying via a giant set of data centers. All of these systems basically work towards centralization of power, and if you have centralization of power, you have huge resilience problems, de facto. All right? Especially when you have resource shortages, and so right now a lot of the digitization hype is built upon the idea that there's no resource shortages, and yet we know there's going to be critical resource bottlenecks. So actually I think, while there are these sort of superficial advantages to speeding things up, and certainly, of course, in a capitalist system where people are trying to make profits, that's an obvious thing you try to do. You default towards trying to automate and speed things up. But actually, from a societal perspective, that becomes increasingly risky over time.
But of course, there's also a demand. I think, would you like to react to this? Yes?
Yes. So what we see is that digitalization makes you obviously more lonely, and more lonely makes you more open for propaganda. And so it's a dangerous place where we are at, where we have to see what is the right thing to say, because actually what is right and wrong in these moments, right? And so it can help, because if you have the right information, it can help you, but it also, as we see it with propaganda, it's very easy to tell the people lies and to tell them what they have to do.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking about demand, as I mentioned earlier, Tamaz, let's talk about your business a little more, because Raisin now is one of the 5 largest fintech companies in Germany, but the market situation was challenging since 22 and still is, due to many factors. Looking back, what did you learn for the future there?
Yeah, so I think in general you're right. I mean, our business is very peculiar, because what hurted a lot of startups on the funding front, the rates going up, is actually good for our underlying business. So it levels itself out. So our business at the same time increased much more, because we launched our business 10 years ago and were majority of the time in the zero rate environment. So if you're looking for a savings account, why would you change for 0.5 or 0.6%? Now of rates offered through us are around 3.5, in the US over 5%. So that fundamentally has accelerated the business on the other side, right? So we are a bit actually profiting or being accelerated by the more normalized situation. So it's not unusual that there are positive rates. So majority of 80s and 90s, the rates were this level or much higher, so up to 10%. So that helped us actually in the underlying business. In terms of what are the implications? Because of course the funding front got you need to become very much more cash efficient, very, very fast. So very fast, like in terms of in couple of months. And I think we were one of the first larger fintechs in Europe November, like almost 2 years ago, like 1.5 years ago, where we said we are profitable. From that point, we were profitable every month, both P&L wise and cash flow wise. So we have made the effort, and I think like when we said we see it coming, it took us 4 or 5 months to go into the kind of positive P&L area, and that was like our learning to be a bit at the forefront and to do more stuff than we would actually kind of say, yeah, we can drag it out, we have a bit of a cash pile and so on, but to accelerate that change on our side. And I mean, the situation changes again, so right, so the markets are, and actually VC sensitivity to the daily news is very, very high. So these people kind of live in their news flow, and the way that changed to a certain degree might change back, and the money can flow back. But we've been capital efficient from day one, so we never kind of overspent or we're doing lavish things on marketing or anything. So we've been quite modest on ourselves, but also on spending towards the consumer acquisition, and that has been kind of philosophy from day one.
Yeah, definitely. And you already mentioned a kind of fear, so to speak, coming back to the situation in Ukraine nowadays, and with regard on Georgia, like the future, what it might behold. Speaking about how we maybe can strengthen our democracies and the counterparty to states like Russia, so to speak, how can we do this? Do we have an approach for how we can do this?
Yes, I mean, spend more time. So, I mean, the only thing we have, everyone has, is time. So, I think this like kind of the certainty to live in a peaceful democracy with open borders, it's not there anymore. So we need to contribute to get politically involved, to go to voting as a minimum, because every vote counts, to get out, to talk to our politicians, to write them, to ask them to push the right agenda, to understand what the parties actually intend and which part is defending democracy and which is kind of undermining. So we need to be more vocal, and everyone has time to spend more time on this, because this is the number 1, 2, and 3 priority of how our kids will live. Will they live in an autocratic, dark society with closed borders and constant threat, or will they enjoy the same we enjoyed, right? So, I mean, I've grown up in the Soviet Union. I do not want to go back to that. Living in Europe with almost 500 million people in a single area where you can travel, you can do stuff, you can move money, and so it's so much worth. It's worth a fight.
Yeah, definitely. But what would you say? How can we strengthen democracy and so like building a very solid foundation for everything else?
I mean, I don't know. I think the first thing to get real with is, I mean, we've been speaking about Ukraine. I mean, the main geopolitical issues right now are Israel, Palestine, and China, US.
Yes.
All right? That's where the meta fight is China-US, right? And the tech sector has is massively implicated in that. Regardless of whether they have democratic ideals or not, de facto, the tech sector works to create gigantic structures that can be used in many, many dubious ways, including by democratic nations, all right? And so the tech sector is a arm of geopolitical strategy of major nation states. I mean, Israel knows this, right? You have a right-wing government that actively supports a very high-tech sector, all right? And the US knows this. They actively support their tech companies. China knows this. They know that because they project geopolitical power via their tech companies. And I think unless you get real with that point, I mean, you can talk about democracy, but in the end, these companies are selling often into, you know, you'll have tech companies from all these democratic countries selling into anti-democratic countries.
But what can we do?
Well, you just get real with that for a start, I guess. I don't know what exactly you do about it, but that's maybe accepting it for a start is a good starting point.
Okay, Tatjana, what would you say?
I would say we have to make it in a local way and start in our communities. Exactly. You understand that there is something wrong, and then if you see someone who's talking bullshit, stop him or challenge him. Don't stop him, because you need the conversation, but really get into it and not say, oh my God, that is nothing I want to have anything to do with it, so leave. Go into the conversation and really try to understand why someone is thinking something like that. Try to understand what your feelings are about it, and what needs do we have right now here, and what values do we want to have as a country. And also, if you have tech companies like Instagram, Meta, whatever, if you see someone talking about things that they're not okay, then take the time and say, this is not okay, or really get, I don't know how to say that, how you do it, to tell Meta, please take care of this guy. I know that's not always working. I know that because we have much bots from China. But I know that it's worth the fight, and always go there and say, this is not okay, so please take care about it.
Okay. Thank you all so much for your inspiring points here on stage.